rope keeps getting like stuck on the camera or GoPro, whatever it's called. Oh god, this is so loose on me. Well, this is normally like a warm-up route, I think. Yeah, this is normally a warm-up route. I don't think this is what the public wants to see, is my face. My name is Tatiana Crenshaw, and I've been climbing for about 7 or 8 years now.
I'm Dr. Nora Schwartz, and I've been climbing for over 20 years now.
My name is Jack. I came from Thailand. I've been here 4 years, and I've been doing climbing for 2 years now.
My name is Tanner Sislaw. I'm 20 years old and an adaptive rock climber at Mesa Rim Climbing Gym in San Diego.
My name is Jillian Yasko, and I am the Adaptive and Innovative Climbing Program Specialist.
I had no clue that adaptive rock climbing was even going to be such a big thing in my life, because life is basically a big lesson.
I've just always loved climbing. I love being on the rocks. It helped me gain confidence. I mean, there was a big difference between my climbing before the adaptive climbing team and after. So I would say being on the adaptive climbing team really made a difference in my life.
My first rock climbing was difficult, not easy, but I thought it's gonna be easy, but then it was not. It was fun. We started off climbing in Thailand for a while, and then I came to California.
I grew up playing sports from a very, very young age. I started playing soccer when I was 4 and baseball, and got into surfing really early. And I did karate and football and pretty much everything you could even imagine just as a kid.
The adaptive climbing program at Mesa Rim started almost 7 years ago, and I had just dropped out of college, moved to San Diego to pursue rock climbing, and the climbing industry notoriously has not been super great for people with disabilities. And so there's always kind of been this gap for people who are differently abled. And so when I started working there, I was like, man, it kind of stinks that there's kids out there or adults out there who don't have an opportunity to climb. Because at the time, climbing was my whole life. And so at 2 a.m., I emailed the owner of Mesa Rim, and I was like, hey, I think we should start an adaptive climbing program. And at 2:01 a.m., he said, absolutely, let's do it.
I have a disability called cerebral palsy. It's a brain injury that I was born with. I was born about 3 months early. As I got older, I started to realize that a lot of the things that I was doing wasn't just for like the fun fact. It was because I had this disability, and it was used as a way to have me work on my various challenges. So I started to really not like any of the things I was doing because I felt like my disability was kind of running my life. I was bullied a lot when I was younger. I was picked on because I couldn't do things like stand on my own very well. I would trip and fall a lot. I could walk, but I wasn't fast, so I was really, really slow. So I quickly developed things like social anxiety. I wasn't invited to birthday parties and things like that. If I was invited for birthday parties, I was constantly reminded that the only reason I was invited was because the parents made them. When I went into my high school years, I encountered really bad depression and had considered things like suicide because I was surrounded by people who, in my school especially, didn't really understand. I was the only child in that school who had a disability, and no one really seemed to understand what that challenge meant. If it weren't for the climbing community and their support and their love and they're willing to just keep going, I don't think I would be alive today, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have changed so much. I wouldn't have learned to grow. in ways that I didn't even think were possible.
I was diagnosed with cancer while I was rock climbing. I not only had cancer, I have fibromyalgia. I have an autoimmune disease, which I've had since I was young. And so the combination was really, really difficult. But when I got cancer, I have breast cancer, I went through treatment and I had to give up climbing. I gave up a lot of things because the treatment was so intense. And then when I was talking to my doctors and saying I'm having a difficult time lifting my arms, I'd like to go through some sort of physical therapy because I had a lot of surgery, I was told, well, there is no physical therapy. Basically, just deal with it. It's scar tissue.
People in China, they look like disabled differently than normal. They tend to look down on you, looking at you for 10 or 20 minutes, like staring at you. That make me feel like something is wrong with me or them. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like that. It make me feel like something is not right. Sometimes I feel like upset about it. People here in California, they just don't actually stare at you. They just come up and say hi, and that is better than just staring. It's much better life for me back in Thailand. I got 4 prosthetic legs. This leg is for normal daily life. It helped me walk and helped me walk up down the stairs. My knee was not functional that well, so I have to do 2 surgery on my knee to remove that knee. I just told myself, I just gonna do it. It's not gonna hurt a bit. It's gonna make my life better.
It was spring break of my first year of college up at UC Santa Cruz, and I just met up with my friends, and we decided to go for a hike and drive down to San Diego and go take a hike at the Potato Chip Rock. I decided to hang from the cliff ledge in the hopes of getting a picture, and I was confident in my ability. There was no hesitation. I just remember hanging from my fingertips, and then everything kind of just went black. I don't really remember falling. I don't remember much of anything. The next thing I remember, I woke up in the hospital, I guess 3 days later, gone through surgery. The hardest part of my recovery was going back home and trying to work with and manipulate these different elements that had been so easy in my life. I was so immersed into sports and being physical, and having that part of my life essentially taken away from me. Probably 20% of the difficulties, and that other 80% was definitely mental and psychological barriers that I had to get over. Even from the first few conscious thoughts that I had in the hospital, I was just very conscious of the fact that I was in a different body than what I was used to, and I knew that I wasn't going to be just another stat, just another person that takes 20 years to get their lives together, because you hear about that so often. It's so unfortunate that these accidents, they really do just completely flip your entire life upside down, and it takes a lot of time to kind of gauge where you're at with everything and find new meaning in the cards that you've been dealt.
When she first started climbing, hated it. She hated climbing, hated me, couldn't get her body off the ground. It was just like a total junk show.
It was hard. It was scary because of how high the walls looked to a little 10-year-old. There was, so many people who were really strong and big, and you had this little child who can barely stand up on her own, being pushed onto this wall and saying, go climb it. So it was really intimidating, and it wasn't until I went to my first adaptive nationals that I discovered that it wasn't about my disability, that it could be something more.
She had never seen a competition that big. I mean, these gyms are giant and they have huge crowds, and she had just never seen it before. To watch her walk into what could be her future and just be enamored by the scope of these competitions was really cool for me as a coach. But even better than that, to see her dream of getting to that level was just inspiring as a person.
You had all these people climbing, but they weren't doing it because of this disability. They were doing it because they wanted to, and they weren't letting anything holding them back. And that was something that I had never really seen before. And so that kind of blew me away. And I think that's really what got me started on this steady kind of track towards, working really hard.
When I started climbing with the adaptive team, at first it was very painful, and then I started adjusting to it, and it really helped me adjust. I don't think about cancer when I'm climbing. I don't think about scar tissue. I just climb. But what it's really helped me with is the flexibility. It's helped me deal with pain. It's helped me feel like I'm a part of something other than myself.
When Nora first started, she really kind of just kept to herself. And she was inspired by climbing for sure, but she was much more reserved and careful. And now everyone at Mesa Rim knows who Nora is because she walks around, she talks to every climber, she asks them for tips on her project, she asks them for ways to do stuff. And she just wants to be and is the heart of the adaptive program at Mesa Rim. She's kind of becoming pretty infamous.
Jillian was pretty strict with me about that climbing is painful. We have to get used to it. Of course, it's more painful for me with the fibromyalgia and the peripheral neuropathy and all of the scar tissue. The pain was different before and after. Before, I struggled with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. Afterwards, I struggled with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, cancer, surgery. I had another tumor. I've lost most of my hearing. And so I struggled with all of that. But I've gone beyond where I was initially as a rock climber. My decision was, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to build my body. I'm going to accept the pain, and I'm going to work beyond it. And that's what I learned to do in climbing.
We took her to a women's climbing festival in Bishop. And Bishop is this little town tucked into the Eastern Sierras with these giant boulders. And so you're just climbing on these boulders. And Nora had never been bouldering outside with me, and I just threw her into the deep end. We got her on this really, really tall, thin hold boulder, and she just scrambled most of the way up, and near the top was just fear gripped. And she was like, I don't think I can move. And we're like, you got it, Nora. And she goes way higher, and then was stoked, came down.
I say in many ways, rock climbing saved my life. And it saved my career because before I had cancer, my life was different. But I was working on a dissertation. And that's one of the hardest things I ever did. And the way I got through my dissertation was I pictured myself rock climbing. One hold at a time, one word at a time, one step at a time. Rock climbing has made me physically, mentally, emotionally, intellectually stronger, and definitely a better person.
You're free. Yay.
I first met Jack when I had actually just started the adaptive program, and anytime I saw someone who was different, I was like, hey, I have a program for you. And I actually went up to him in a Thai food restaurant in La Jolla. And I was like, hey, I run an adaptive climbing program. I think you should come climb with me. And he wasn't really into it, which is fair because I probably seemed like a crazy person. But then months later, his mom emailed me and was like, hey, I think you came up to us one day, Jack wants to try climbing.
Julian is a great coach for all of us. I contact Julian from the Mesa Rim gym to ask her if I can come and try to climb. So I came and climbed. Sometimes she just let me do boulder and high rope, and then I keep climbing after then. Rock climbing helped me with a lot of things, like stress. Rock climbing has been great in my life. If you take your time to think about it, you can get to the top. I got to the top, I feel great, I feel relieved that I can do it. There's nothing holding me back. People need to change their attitude more and just not disrespect other people, like treat other people the same. That's how I would say.
So when I'm up on the climbing wall and all I really see is this skewed view of, a top hold or whatever the color may be, it's, I always kind of zone in on my breathing, and I've learned only recently how important breathing really is, because it just kind of calms your whole system down. And you can get so caught up in the fact that everything hurts and everything feels inflamed and your arms are about to explode and your fingers are barely hanging on. And it's so important to just stay within yourself and stay calm within your breathing. And so when everything really hurts, and everything always hurts, because arms weren't meant to hold up the body for minutes at a time. That's what legs were generally for. That's why our legs are so much bigger than our arms. But who's to say that your arms couldn't change roles and take on that weight bearing role of what legs normally do, testing your body.
I met Tanner after his accident. I was teaching an adaptive climbing course at a gym in LA that he came to. And then a little while later, we started meeting up more and more in LA, and he got more into it. I don't know what clicked for Tanner, but over those months, as we were trying to figure out how to help him the most, something really did click, and he just went full force into climbing. And I got a text message from him one day, and he's like, I think I want to compete at nationals. And I was like, yes, the epitome, like the best day of my year is adaptive nationals.
For me, I know that I want to be a world champion someday in rock climbing. I want to have that gold medal around my neck. And that's kind of really all I see. All these odds are stacked against you. And, even in the midst of all this hardship and all these unjustifiable odds, you have to define yourself as the favorite to win. You have to overcome. And when you do overcome, when you do, match both hands on that final hold, it's everything. It's just absolutely incredible.
There's nowhere to go.
So my experience with the adaptive team, I had never really met a community quite like the adaptive team before. I was in various adaptive programs, but not to this extent. The adaptive team was the first one where I actually felt like at home and kind of accepted.
Yeah, my friendship with Nora is great. First time I met her, we climbed together. We just probably high rope together. That Nora believed me most of the time. That was fun. She's a great climber too, and great friend.
I see Jack and Tanner on those ropes, and I am amazed. It's like, I get this feeling, it's like we're doing it together, and nothing's going to stop us. Jack and Tanner steal my heart. They really steal everybody on my team steals my heart. We are a team. We are a family.
That's just an incredible privilege. I don't really get to climb with them all that often, but when I do, it's so special because, everyone's kind of in that same boat, in that same zone of just wanting to have the best time and not being concerned about, exactly how they're performing, but just how much they're getting out of that experience and how much they're improving from an individual standpoint.
We went climbing outside in Scotland. And if you've never been there, it's shocking that anyone climbs because it rains every single day.
It was cold. It was cold, it was wet, and it was magical. That's the only word I could use to describe it. Because of all the training that I had had, like, up to this, because of all the strength that I had built up, I was able to walk across these slippery, wet rocks in the ocean, like, with ease. Like, I could just hop from one to another, which is something that for someone with CP that affects their, like, legs, that's something that, doctors would be pulling their hair out. When I was younger, there was actually a scare that when I was born, they thought I was never actually going to be able to walk. And here I am climbing in Scotland on a cliffside, scrambling my way up this cliff like no one's business. And that was amazing.
The biggest thing with Tot is she just didn't believe in herself. She didn't think she was capable of pushing herself. She didn't think she was capable of stepping out of her comfort zone. And now, I mean, she's the captain of the adaptive team. She's the epitome of what it means to become a climber. Most recently, she competed at the World Championships in Innsbruck, Austria. And it's really cool. It's this huge outdoor climbing wall set right at the base of the Alps. And they just put these really hard routes up.
I definitely am grateful for being a part of something like this. To be honest, I don't think I'd be alive if it weren't for finding this community. They've taught me so much about self-acceptance and being comfortable in your own skin.
So I've climbed with different climbers, with able-bodied climbers, and I never felt like I fit in. Because of fibromyalgia and the chronic pain and fatigue, I was always slower and I was always more scared. But with this team, they accepted me as I am, and I was able to climb differently and climb the same. It didn't matter how fast I climbed. It didn't matter how well I climbed. It doesn't matter how I climb. It matters that I just do the best that I can.
The main thing that adaptive climbing has taught me thus far is just being more in tune with my body. I've never been so familiar with, the inner workings and, these signs that tell me one way or another that, I'm doing something right. I need to rest. I need to, change something up. It was so encouraging to be around people who just had a different mindset, just people who had their sights set on, becoming something more than just, what we define as normal.
People here in California at Mesa Rim saw me climb. They were amazed that I can do something that they can't do. The more practice I get, the more easy it is to do it.
I always jokingly say that teamwork makes the dream work. And it's like such a cheesy, cliche thing to say, but it's true. You feed off everyone's energy. Like when Tatiana does a new route, Nora gets psyched to try it, and then Jack gets psyched, and we all start working the same project together. And so it's all driven by the team. Like the energy that everyone brings is the tone for practice that night.
I guess some advice that I would give, people with disabilities who are looking to try rock climbing or any sport really, would be that it never hurts to try because you never know what's going to happen if you don't. Every little challenge that you face, it doesn't really matter what it is, other than that it gives you another wall to climb.
Going back and forth, giving each other tips or, like cheering each other on. It's just such a family. It really is.